Now we're going to talk a little bit about liquid luster now. Liquid luster is a sandblast coating that helps you fingerprint proof your sandblast surfaces. You know, when you sandblast a piece of glass, while it does frost the glass and give it a nice appearance, sandblasting will also pick up a lot of fingerprint oils, water spots, anything like that can get trapped into the little tiny fissures that's created when you're sandblasting your glass. The liquid luster will fill in those little fissures and give you a nice glow to your glass and fingerprint proof those sandblasted surfaces. Now you can do multiple coatings of the liquid luster to give a higher sheen on the glass, or do single coats to try and maintain as much of the sandblast appearance as you can. Now you're not just limited to using liquid luster on sandblasted pieces. This piece here we have both sandblasted and worked with pumice to give it a little bit more of a lustrous glow. You can also use liquid luster in conjunction with Vari-Etch acid polishing. The Vari-Etch, while it will etch and frost your glass, it also fingerprint proofs your glass. But then you can add a layer of liquid luster on top of that and it'll give your glass an even nicer sheen to the material. So you can use it a lot of different ways for different things. Today we're going to straightforward just look at coating this piece with some liquid luster, and we're going to take a look at the setup process. You'll need your liquid luster, obviously. You'll want some gloves to work with so you don't get it all over your hands and you don't make too much of a mess. You'll either want a really well ventilated area or a respirator, or both. There are a lot of fumes that come off of the liquid luster as you're using it and after it's done and you're letting it dry. So you want your piece in a well ventilated area, and you want to be using a respirator when you do this so that you're not overcome by any of the fumes that are created with the liquid luster. You want your piece of glass all prepped and ready, of course. Now ours is sitting on a piece of cardboard because I am going to have some overflow. It will make a little bit of a mess, so you don't want to mess up any nice tabletop or work surfaces you have. Use a piece of cardboard. You'll want a cup that you can put some liquid luster into, glass marbles, we'll talk about this in a moment, and you want your application cloths. Now for application and cleaning, I really like using these just blue construction type cloth paper towels. They're relatively lint-free, they're inexpensive to use, and they work quite well. You can pick these up from Lowe's, Home Depot, any place like that. You're really looking at some sort of application and buffing material that is relatively lint-free, because the last thing you want to do is have a lot of lint and fibers trapped in the surface of your glass when this finally dries. Now I'm going to put my towel in my little plastic container here. I can use that to pour some liquid luster on to saturate my towel. Now I do know some people that use something like a microfiber cloth for the application of the liquid luster. It's nice because it does not create any fibers, gives you a nice surface, but you have to be aware that when you use this liquid luster, any application material you use is going to be a one-time use. Once the liquid luster has saturated the material, it's pretty much done. You're not going to be able to clean it out. Now I will use this microfiber cloth as my final buff on the piece. It's not going to get a lot of liquid luster on here, so I can use it numerous times, but it's going to leave a nice finish on there. So I'll have my application cloth ready. You'll also want to have a couple more of these cloths to be able to wipe off the excess liquid luster. So I usually use about 2 of these, fold them over into a square and have them ready, and maybe just 1 more just in case. And then my final buffing rag. So I'm not going to be wearing a respirator while I'm doing this, so I can talk through it. Now I am in a pretty good ventilated area, so I'm not worried about that. Normally you really want to try and wear a respirator when you're working with this. It's going to be the best solution for keeping yourself safe. I'm going to cap that. My cloth is soaked in there. Got a lot of liquid luster on there. So now I'm going to apply as quickly as I can to the surface of my glass, getting as much of a coverage area as I possibly can. And you want to do this as quickly as you can. I've got a nice coverage on there, so it shouldn't be very streaky. I'm going to take my first cloth, and I'm going to rub as hard and as fast as I can to get as much of the liquid luster off my surface as I can. I'm going to continue to fold this over. As you can see, I'm getting more and more liquid luster on there. So I want to try and remove as much as possible from the surface of the glass. I'm also going to remove my 1 glove that has the liquid luster on there. I'm going to use my second cloth. Again, rub as much of the liquid luster off the surface of my glass as I possibly can. Now, oftentimes on a regular sandblasted surface, you're probably going to want to use 2 to 3 coats of the liquid luster. Now, this piece has been sandblasted and then worked with pumice, so it's a little bit of a finer surface, and I don't really have to go as deep to try and fingerprint proof it. Most sandblasted surfaces in either a 220 or 320 grit, you might be able to get away with 1 or 2 surfaces. If you're doing a rougher grit like a 120, you probably want to look at doing 3 to 4 coats of the liquid luster. Now I'm going to use my microfiber cloth to really give it a good buffing. You really want to try and make sure you get as much excess off so you prevent any streaking on your piece. So it gives it a really nice, clean appearance, and you don't notice that there's actually a coating of any type on your glass. Now, if you do have buildup in an area that you need to clean up, you can use some steel wool and slightly abrade the surface before your next coat, and then try and remove as much as possible, and it will often clean that up. So now you see my glass piece has a very nice sheen to it. Don't see any streaking in there. And you're looking at about 4 hours to let this air cure. Now it can go a little bit faster if you provide a heat source or put a fan on it, but for the most part, you want to leave this for about 4 hours before you try a second coat. So it is a process. I'll make sure I don't have any excess liquid luster on the outside of my piece. And that's looking pretty good. Now I know you've been wondering about the marbles. Why do I have a cup of glass marbles here? Well, the liquid luster is an air-cured material. As you use material out of this container and reseal it, you're going to be trapping air into this container. Any air that you trap inside the container will try and start curing whatever liquid luster you have left. So if you've used half your bottle and you cap this thing up, 2 weeks later you're going to come back and half of this is probably just going to be a gooey mess, and you're going to have to throw this away and order more liquid luster. To keep this working as long as possible, once I'm done with this and I poured off what I needed, I'm going to fill the extra space with glass marbles. That will raise the level of my liquid luster closer to the top again, so I can cap it off without trapping a whole lot of air in here.